Hi gang, it's Hexy, and I started to play 2 more turns of Longstreet's attack a few days ago. Tried to do my 2 turn rotation, and I got so swept up by this fight that I just drove on to the end. So we're going to go over what's happened here, talk about the victor, and we will actually determine the margin together. So let me hide something here first. All right. Hope y'all didn't see any of that. All right. So we played through all 14 turns. And what you're seeing on the map is the final situation. And then we're going to talk about some of the pluses and minuses. So, let's get here to Anderson. Not the Anderson attack that went off historically. Amazingly enough, the 3 or 4 Union brigades over here handed it to Anderson, along with the good artillery. Matter of fact, I need to note that as a key. Okay, so we'll talk about that here shortly. So they put a hurting on Anderson, just chased him right off the bat, even with the good morale ratings that these troops have. Of course, Anderson's morales aren't as strong division-wide as McLaw's or Hood. So the Confederates did hang on to that one victory point. They managed to grab it and keep it. So they got one for that. It went back and forth in that area, okay? But they never got into that valley there, into that where that brook is, that creek is. They literally made their first advance, and then they had a second surge on the right side, and then they just got shut down mostly by artillery and good Union rifle fire, musket fire. All right, stalled that attack. Literally stuffed. I mean, Lang got stuffed right off the bat on his first engagement. All right, in the middle, Johnny Reb still owns a peach orchard. He got his guns in there, and they did some damage. And drove the Union off. But you'll notice there's no more victory locations. Oh, I got to mark that one. Sorry. Yeah, it was marked. I took the bead and moved it. So there's no more, really no threat in the orchard. As you can see, the reinforcements coming on because of the blind event chits going in the cup. I think I only drew the brigade activation thing, brigade reserve movement or whatever, one time for the Union. So never got those reinforcements there on these guys. Never got moved because whenever I drew after Sickles died, whenever I drew the Hancock chit, I needed action somewhere else. So they never moved. Schweitzer and Tilton, they moved like twice and never was able to get them moving again. They never even saw combat. And over to the Wheatfield area, all right? The Confederates own it. Now, they took that hex right there, but then they got pushed at it, and the Union took it back, and then there was a firefight, and they drove the Union out, but the Union were the last one in that hex, so the Confederates don't get that 3 victory points. Crawford was from the 5th Corps. He was getting ready to get his division through the Valley of Death there, and then, of course, they hit limiteds, and a couple other things that we'll go over here in a minute. And, of course, probably the key prize of this is Little Round Top. I don't know how much farther the Confederates are going to be able to push, although both Law and Benning were still in pretty good shape. Once you knock these Union units down, their cohesions it's terrible. If you get them depleted, they're terrible. You get them shaken or you get them disrupted, and it's terrible. You can just close assault the crap out of them. But, this was one of those where I had to rush troops over there, so I took the first ones and nearest ones I could get and moved them that direction. But Law hung on to both hexes of Little Round Top, and I could never get enough Union force. Probably was going to do it with Fisher, or Fisher was going to drive up here and take these back and steal some of his points. But once you see the figures here, you're going to understand that it didn't make sense. Okay, play of the game. This is good. This is a good system. It can be tedious on the chit draw. There was a lot of chits to draw in this game, but there's other games that I know that I play that are even more tedious than this. Accountability in this game is a lot easier, and it's just as efficient. I mean, like I say, you're not losing 50 and 100 troops at a time and having to mark them on a chart or put a number marker underneath them, like some of the bigger games. But the shaken and the disorganized or disrupted chits work fine. And then you mix depletion in for loss, and then the broken track for depleted units that fail cohesion checks. Okay, units on their broken side or their battle worn side that fail cohesion checks. Now the Union has one disadvantage: is artillery and fragile units that suffer a skedaddle or a failed cohesion on their depleted side. They're eliminated from the battle permanently, which makes sense for cannons to an extent, because a lot of times cannons would get spiked. But I don't remember reading a whole lot of stories about that in this fight, because there just was no time. They probably just maybe knocked the wheel off or flipped the cannon. I don't know, did something to them, I'm sure. Maybe tried to spike them. But yeah, the rule makes sense. All right. So we know Sickles was KIA'd. We know Hood was KIA'd, or they were casualties, and they were removed from the fight. And interesting enough, there's no victory points for that. So you had a floating victory location point system. And all the little red chits you see there, those are floating victory points every turn for the Confederates. If they own it at the end of a turn, they get the points for it. And the blue ones for the Union. Now, the Union only had, I think, 8 or 11 to start with. And once they lost those, if they could take those back and get points. But the ones that were Confederate only, like that 3-pointer right there, the Union, by taking it, wouldn't get any points. They would just deny the Confederates. Okay? So, we're going to do this together. So here is the victory points only by location at the end of the game. And let me tell you something. That did not change that did not get there to the last turn. So victory points by location are in favor of the Confederates. That's 4 points. All right? So if we were to look at the victory conditions on that at 4 points, it is, pull it out here, all right? That is a minimal victory for the Confederates using just the victory point locations. Now, let's do the math, because there's one other. All right? These are the casualties right here. Awful lot of blue. Like I say, those low cohesions. And when I go through the review here, talking about some of the things I noticed, you'll get the picture. Awful lot of blue. Awful lot of artillery, which is a lesson learned. So those numbers, you total them up, and then they get a half point for each strength point they destroyed. These were on the broken track, okay? You flip them over to their full strength side. Some of those units, they're already on their battle worn. There is no full strength side. And they get a half a point for each one. So the Union total count right there is 173. So the Confederates will get 173 divided by 2. They'll get another 86 points, or 86, so we round it to 86 points. So that would take them to 90. All right, so the Confederates would have 90 points for casualties. All right, the Confederate casualties for the Union was 59. So 59 divided by 2 is 29. So we'll take it down 30 points, and the Confederates have a 50-point victory margin. So, Herman, if you're watching this, or any expert or anybody who was part of building this game, if I got that wrong, somebody let me know. So this is a 46-plus victory points is a decisive victory for the Confederates. All right. Yeah, I know, Chris, you're going to say it again. Are you sure the Union's ever won a battle you've played? Yes, they have. They won that Winchester battle, and I'm sure I'll get to more. All right. Chris has commented on my Civil War gameplay that I seem to favor the Confederacy. Imagine me being from Virginia. All right, so now I'm going to go over a few things here. All right, so I wrote these down on the board. All right, so Union artillery safe. Okay. At first, when I set this game up, I thought to myself, boy, the Confederates are short. I thought they had a lot more guns, because I'm used to looking at these names like Henry, Cabell, seeing those battalion names or whatever they were. And I didn't see that here. And I knew they kind of combined everything. So I could do a little research and be able to match the names up, because I'm sure those are the even lower tier level names, or maybe the bigger tier level names. The Confederates have very few 6-gun batteries, but the Union has a lot of them. All right. So failure number one, getting those guns out of the peach orchard on the front line. I didn't. I stayed there and attempted to apply that firepower, which was good at some times, and depending on how you roll the dice, is bad at other times, okay? So I lost a lot of Union guns. So get them out of the way when you can, or protect them. Stacking. Stack guns together. Because I got news for you. 2 6-gun batteries of Union guns firing at the same time from the same hex and canister, that's a lot of firepower. And the Union guns, for the most part, when they had that opportunity, a 6 and a 6 together, a 6 and a 4 together, they were devastating. They most of those Confederate units over there that were put in the broken track were because of that. Okay, so keep your Union artillery safe and stack them. Keep them stacked. All right, move USA depleted units back. Get the depleted units off the front line if you can. You can't always do it, or you may end up suffering opportunity fire. Well, I got news for you. When one of these guys is depleted and he's shaken or he's disrupted, there are cases where they have a cohesion of -1. And when you take another depletion or another morale check and they're depleted and they're already disrupted, you're going to roll. And if they're at a -1, they're going to end up breaking and being over on a broken track in that number 3 slot where it's going to be 4 turns before you can think about rebuilding them. So you've got to get them away if you can. So it might be one of those things where you 2-line your units. Like I say, with activation, it's kind of impossible to do. And it shows the chaos of how this fight was over there. But if this was one of those games where I didn't have to roll for activation, or the command against the command rating of the leader, I would double line all these things so that I could have second line troops take up the position of the front line troops when they got rattled. All right, this game does a very good job of showing that you're shaken and you're disrupted, and just units getting rattled in combat without even taking a loss. I mean, they can get down to a disrupted where they're losing 2 strength points and 2 cohesion rating. Well, I got news for you. When you're a 3 cohesion rating, which most of the unit full strength are 3s and 2s, and you take a 2 cohesion rating hit, you're down to a 1 or a 0. So you got to get them off the line. All right. Avoid your non-guaranteed plus close combats. Not always going to be able to do it. But before you decide to establish a close combat, make sure that, especially if you're going to have units from multiple hexes, because you're going to get pluses for that stuff, you better make sure that the unit you choose, or the hex you choose as the main hex, that if they get shot at and chased away, that the other 2 units are still going to get pluses in the close combat. Because you do not, the difference between close combat and fire is you got a different set of tables. So on this table here, so if you roll a dash, a no effect on a fire combat, there's no table you got to roll against. But if you roll a no effect in a close combat, you got to roll on this close fight table up here, and you can see there has attackers can take a beating. And that happened a lot because I did multiple hex combat, but the units in one of the flanking hexes weren't very strong or efficient, and there were cases where they took a beating. But then you also might get lucky and you might roll that 6 and a 5 or a 5 and a 6 and put a punishing on the defender, even though your numbers were dwindled down. So when you can, really just, if I played this game again, I don't know how much close combat I would be doing. Probably a lot of 1-hex fire combat or 2-hex fire combat. I don't know. Which, for a lot of parts, for a majority of Civil War fights, that's the way it was anyhow. They weren't about to run in there with their bayonets. But again, there are cases where they did. And we know from reading about the 20th Maine that they charged down the back end of Little Round Top. So we know Pickett's charge and how that happened. Not to mention some of the fighting up on Culp's Hill, okay? So, but really think about your close combats before you do them. All right, rally, 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 especially the USA units. So you have to be 3 hexes away when you choose to do I think it's a regroup. When you select a regroup order on the brigade that's active, you've got to rally these Union troops. And then the next one there says rebuild. You've got to get them rebuilt. I did it all around there for about 7 game turns before I realized, oh my God, I got an awful lot of Union troops on the broken track, and those are going to be victory points. I got to get them back on. The problem is when they're on their battle-worn side, most of them are 2 and 1. Now, granted, you're only rolling 1d6, But if you're like me and terrible at rolling, you're not going to get the rolls that you want. So, but you've got to try. Because you got to get those. You've got to get those strength points back in the battle, if anything, to knock down the victory points the Confederates are going to get. All right, and last but not least, 6 for the Confederates. You need to attack hard before turn 12. Turn 12, the lull in the battle chit goes in. Now get this. On turn 12, I drew Longstreet, which was good. Then I drew Hayes for the Union. Then I drew the lull in battle chit. All right, game turnover. Turn 13, I drew 4 chits, and then I drew the lull in battle chit. All right, and then 15, I got lucky, and it didn't come out till there was maybe probably 7 or 8 brigades that still needed to be activated. So the game goes quicker once you get that lull in the battle chit in there. All right, so takeaways, just basic overall, major Confederate victory. Without that lull in battle chit, could it have changed anything? It would be the luck of the die for Union activations is the only thing that would change it. I think over here where Anderson was, down in that area down there, that way, I think that the Union could have put a punishment on him if they could have got these reinforcements back here, get into the fight. If Fisher had got a chance to fight. The Union do have a couple units that have a cohesion of 5 and 4s. So, like I say, if you can't activate the brigade, you get a limited activation. All they can do is shoot. So, yeah, you really need to think. This, I don't know. Standing the front line of this, I've always been a believer that there was nothing wrong with what Sickles did. I just think that his friendly arm to his right, maybe they should have acted on it and said, well, you know what, we can't get him to reverse. Let's see if we can't act on it. I think 5th Corps should have moved up a lot sooner into position. They should have seen that. A good commander, in my opinion, would have seen that. My opinion has always been of Sickles was he got out in front. He delayed the Confederates. Yeah, they paid a heavy price for it, but what if those units from the 3rd Corps, who by the looks of this game were not very strong morale-wise, what if their line had been sitting on there on Little Round Top, and those Confederate troops from Texas and Georgia and Alabama and South Carolina roll up in there with those high cohesions that they got, and their morale extremely high, and their first point of attack was Little Round Top, and that would have been the end of the Union line at that time, and support would have been slower to come because they'd have been on Little Round Top before the Union Army would have sent their support down there. I don't know. I think it could have been could have even been harder. Then again, maybe they would have fought like crazy, and who knows? We weren't there. I wasn't there. All right, maybe a couple of y'all out there were there. All right. So the Blind Sword series, I played 2 games of it. Not quite mastered it yet. I get better each turn I play. Herman, very, very good system. I got a couple things that if I can get them down in writing, I'm going to send them off to you to maybe help me understand. I think it's maybe 1 or 2 minimal rules that just kind of throw me for a loop. But I'm thinking that maybe as I play some of the, I think there's a couple newer versions than this one. Looking at those rules, it might help me translate here because I know the system's pretty much the same across the board. If you got one, play it. If you don't got one, I believe you can still buy them from Revolution. I don't think they're out of print. At least not all of them anyhow. How can you not love the maps? Hey, just shoot. Just out of the respect for Rick Barber and his ability and now his passing away, buy one just to get the map and put it up in a poster board somewhere. These are gorgeous, beautiful maps. Beautiful counters. Revolution does a good job. Who's ever printing them with their counters, they're very nice. They're big. You can read them. The rules, they're not terribly hard, guys. And this game is, if you want small play area but crunchy, but not overly crunchy like that thing over there, this is great. You're going to get a good representation of the fight. All right. How can I say that? I live an hour from Gettysburg. I'm up there twice a year at least. And it's funny because when I go up there, sometimes if I go up there with friends to take them around the battlefield, I'll go look at everything and it's kind of hasty. But a lot of times I'll go up there on my own and I'll go to one specific point of the battlefield. I'll walk it. I'll study it. I'll look at it. I stay away from the reenactors. That's not my thing. You know, more power to you if you can do that. It's just not my thing because I don't think we can recreate what actually happened. It's fun to watch, I'm sure. But I like to go up there and study the ground and think to myself, man, how'd they manage this, pull this one off? So, good game. Like I say, if you got one of these, get it out and play it and let me know what you think about it. Excellent work, Herman. Excellent work for Revolution Games printing this thing. And probably not going to happen right away, but I still got, was it 2 or 3 others? There are at least 2 others that I need to play. And I'll eventually, I got Thunder in the Ozarks and was it Kernstown? And I want to say I got one more. Or maybe that's it. But they'll eventually get on this table and they'll get played. Great games. Love it. This is Hexy. Let me get this up so y'all can see the end result of this fight. All right. Talk to y'all soon.